Hey guys, how you doing? This is Bruce, aka the Weather Soul, here on the Weather Report. And as you can see, I'm at an airport, Minnesota St. Paul International Airport, and I'm flying back to San Jose today. And I've had a great time over at the Minnesota State Fair at the Back to the 50s Hot Rod Show. We had a great time, and but when I'm traveling, can't do a live stream, so we won't have a live stream tonight on YouTube or Rumble. But we want to do some bonus content for you that we taped last week after the Danny Hudson episode with Tennessee Hot Sauce Company. And I want you to enjoy that because we really went in depth with some stuff with Danny, and it's going to be some real good content. And also, we're going to be back tomorrow morning on X, so you can join into the conversation. We recapped the weekend, and we had a really good time. And hope you be there. So YouTube, Rumble, X, you can find us anywhere. This is the Weather Report and the Weather View, and we will see you tomorrow. See ya. Enjoy the episode.
A little bit.
Yeah. All right. So welcome to the bonus episode called "Time to Spice It Up." I don't know. That's why I'm pre-typing it as. But here in the second half of the episode with Danny Hudson. And if you guys didn't watch the first half, go watch that, obviously. But here's the second half, and we're gonna just continue talking. And he was just talking about how he previously had a podcast, but he ended up shutting down. When you have a business like what Danny's doing, you really don't need a podcast. Your stuff sells itself. Whereas, with me trying to sell, music marketing services, I need a podcast because I got to be able to talk about this shit and show my expertise in order for people to be like, oh, okay, and buy. But with hot sauce, people were like, avocado ghost, that looks interesting. Let me buy some of that.
Yeah. Well, the podcast wasn't hot sauce. The podcast was actually before the hot sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't actually hot sauce related. It was just something else that I was working on at the time. And then what ended up happening though is the hot sauce stuff ended up getting
in the way.
It grew faster than I was expecting. And I'm like, well, I could probably do all of it. And I think I did like one episode and then I go, I can't. I can't.
Too much.
Can't
I mean, you also got a full-time job too. Like I know you got a family with young kids as well too. But if you didn't have that full-time job, you just did hot sauce, the podcast, and the family, you might be able to do it. But hot sauce, podcast, family, full-time job, like fuck, throw it out the door.
Yeah, definitely. But it was fun, and you learn a lot about being able to engage and have conversations like these with people, even over a webcam, or whatever it might be. It helped a lot. So I've been able to go on shows and kinds of things and hopefully at least be engaging, to where we're able to continue the, keep the flow going and that kind of thing, as opposed to really kind of being a stick in the mud and dragging it down and that, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. People who have never had their own podcast or done a decent amount of them, you got to like pry at them to get them to talk, and so it's definitely a lot better, because I mean, like me, I can do a whole podcast. I did my own solo podcast for 4 years, so I can do a podcast and no problem. And
then you just have to make it interesting.
He does the X morning show all by himself all the time. So.
Oh, whatever. That's Ken.
That's right.
That's Ken doing that morning show every morning. But yeah, no, I can get on it. I can carry for like 30 minutes on that show sometimes. Just depends on what you get me started on, Bruce. So.
Well, exactly, because actually the X show that we have is called The Morning View, and when we go and do it, it's actually just a more candid, more raw, more everything, more just kind of us lampooning everything in the news and all that stuff. So it's kind of a more
we
more
throw
relaxed, almost a group phone call.
Any taboos get thrown out the window in it. So there's no taboo.
We ruin our good reputation.
Yeah, well, I'm honestly surprised how you guys are able to do a quality job with as many people, at the same time, just because, I've listened to other shows and things that have more than two people regularly on them. And it's hard, it's hard to listen to, generally speaking, just because it becomes less conversational and more, let me get what I need to say out.
Yeah.
you know, and so everybody's going for that moment kind of all at the same time, and you know, they step on each other or they're rushing to try and say something and that kind of thing, and it just makes it just ends up making it harder to listen to.
It can be.
If it makes you feel better, we struggle with that because we're
Oh, we got
the
no,
three of
we-
us.
we
Poor
really had-
Jason. Jason gets 4 words in every episode.
I don't even think he said
Any
anything
one
this
of-
episode. I mean, he was in and out, but still,
Right.
yeah.
But
Well, that's why he's
anyone
my
of the-
favorite, you know.
Yeah,
like,
well, of
we
course,
really
he's
got-
everyone.
we really got
Jason's
a good
everyone's favorite.
Yeah, we really got a good review from John Odermatt, and I got this review from him before when I just had one co-host, which was Dougie, and he says it's nice to have a group of people that can just bounce ideas and really be different in their kind of their opinions and their facts and their wisdom and their knowledge about the certain subjects that we do go to, and it really enhances the podcast. And as long as you're not cross-talking and yelling like the people over on the View, the ABC show in the morning,
Yeah,
View,
right.
they're screaming and yelling all the time, but I think the dynamic works good. I think the group of guys that we have are good because we're all about 10 years apart, which is pretty cool. I'm the oldest guy. I'm 138, and everybody else is younger than me, so
I'm only 80.
it works out well.
So Ken's 128, and then it just
Yeah, it just works right down.
10 years apart kind of thing.
Marcos is holding his age very well.
Yeah,
Very
Harkos is
well.
like 10 dog years apart
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it.
from the rest of us.
Superior genetics.
So tell us about your previous podcast. So you did a financial podcast. I'm really curious about that because Ken had brought it up before, and
Yeah.
I'm interested about everybody's history that comes onto this podcast. So give us a little bit of insight on where you started with your podcast and how that came about.
Well, so the conversation that we had earlier where I was talking about when my boss called me, my first business venture was actually going into essentially a finance consultant was my original goal, right? Because I had worked in corporate finance for over a decade. And so my thought was, I'm like, well, I understand, how a P&L works. I understand how, your balance sheet, I understand a lot of those things. And so I could leverage that in working with small businesses and that kind of thing who may not understand that. And so part of my idea of being able to add some additional credibility to it was have a podcast where I talk about things that are going on in the economy, right? And obviously this was during COVID. And so we're talking about things like restaurants and store closures and Fed activity and that kind of thing and how it impacts small businesses. So like at the end of a lot of the episodes, I tried to say, okay, well, I just talked for 30 minutes, but how does this apply to me? And I try to kind of break it down into saying, hey, well, when the Fed is increasing interest rates, this is how it would impact your small business, or this is how it would impact you, or things along those lines. And so that was kind of the way that I was able to do it. And I actually had a pretty decent run, in terms of some guests that I had, like Larry Sharp was a guest of mine that I had on there.
Nice.
Larry Sharp, like California, the dude?
Larry Sharp.
Yeah,
New
the
York-
libertarian
New
from
York,
New York, vice president candidate, Chef Andrew Gruel out of California. He was a guest on there. I had Clint Russell, who recently ran for
Very
VP
nice,
of
very
the
nice.
LP ticket. So I had some folks that were on there that carried some names. I had Scott Horton on there. I chatted with Scott Horton for about an hour or so.
Damn.
Yeah, that was a good one too. You had
you
some
know,
great
give you a
guys. It
lot
was
of
a
time.
fantastic show.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he did most of the talking on that one. I just would kind of say, "Hey, wait,
Scott
an
Horton.
easy interview."
right. And so so we had a pretty good run of it. It was just fun to do because we took a look at like the Green New Deal, right? And I broke down
that was
the
a good
Green
one.
New Deal. Hey, this is what they're trying to pull out of there. This is what makes it up. This is why it's important, and that kind of thing. And so it was fun because I got to learn along the way, and then I also got to kind of learn how to do a show. Because like the first one I did, I'm like, no, I don't need notes. I'll just have the articles pulled up and I know where stuff is. And literally I'm sitting there scrolling through the article and, I'm sweating, and all that. And I'm just like, oh boy, this is harder than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause then you realize, hey, wait, it's not just me bullshit. I'm actually recording this and going to put it
Right.
Right. So after that, like I started having my sources, but then like I started having the specific pieces pull out of it that I wanted to highlight, and that kind of thing. So it was a quick reference over there, and I could talk about it, and and that piece. And I had one month that I did like entrepreneur month. So like Ken was a guest.
Yeah.
And then I had interviewed some other people that had started their own businesses. A lot of them were during COVID, so people that had gotten laid off from, wherever they were at before decided to start their own thing, and kind of go that route too. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It had nothing to do with hot sauce. But we got to the point where we were about to dump essentially money into marketing and trying to get it going and that kind of thing. And I told my wife, I'm like, doing the podcast has been fun, but this other piece, I'm like, I just don't know if I want to do that. And so we kind of pulled the plug on that piece, did the podcast for a little bit longer. And then that was when the hot sauce stuff started going. And then I had to pull the plug on the podcast too. So.
Yeah, everything ebbs and flows as far as podcasts. This is like the third or fourth podcast that I've done. The one with me and Dougie had, we did probably more than 150 episodes, and then I tried to do it on my own for one that was very short lived, and then these guys all decided that we'd like to get together and do this one. So this is the third or fourth iteration of Weather Report, Weather Soul podcast, whatever you want to call it. That's where we came from, but we came up with the Weather Report for our main flagship program,
and that was just my idea for the newsletter.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? That's a great thing for the whole thing. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, well, we just did it,
I love it.
But yeah, it's good. I like the history of everybody that's been affiliated with the Nomad Network. We've had most of the people that we know and that we hang around with from the Nomad Network on. And it's always interesting to hear other people's stories and how they've gotten up and gotten, either beat down and gotten back up, and beat down and gotten back up again, and stuff like that. And then there's just all interesting stories, and I love every single one of them, man.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of people that were fairly active in that space as well it was generally different moments, right, where we would all kind of listen to the same material, the same content, whatever it might be, but what people picked out and used to really drive them was different. So like, for example, for me, it wasn't even really specific. I mean, obviously, like we talked about before with Jason, it was, controlling the source of your income, having multiple revenue streams and that kind of thing. But it actually wasn't until I combined it to an episode that Tom Woods did where he talked about subscriptions, where I was really tied the two together. And I'm like, okay, this is how I can sit here and try to leverage, all of this together. And if I had to guess, most people, and you guys included in this, probably had a period of time where, everything over here is kind of a jumbled mess. And then there was one moment in time where, it got smoothed out. And that was where you're like, okay, now I kind of get an idea of where I need to go to move forward on it.
Right. Because my vision or my road to this was number one, I was ready just to bag podcasting altogether, but I love doing podcasts. I love talking to people. I love interviewing people. I love just having people on to give them exposure and stuff like that. I found myself not so much as an entrepreneur as much as me and Ken had discussed before, being a helper and helping people out on their road to doing whatever they're doing. And it didn't occur to me to that until, and I'm a big Jason fan because Jason's been my mentor for many years, but it wasn't until I started listening to Jack Spirko on the Survival podcast that really kicked me in and asked and said, this is your passion. If this is your passion, then do what you want to do. And one of my passions is podcasting. The other passion is gardening. So now I've kind of scrapped everything that was kind of making things all streamy and all, tangled up in my mind and everything. And now I'm just kind of like gardening, podcasting. Those are the two things that I'm good at. Those are the two things that I want to do, and helping people out. I love it.
And it's been fun following the gardening stuff too, as far as seeing it on social media and that kind of thing, like kind of coming in. Cause I know, especially most people who are paying attention to that kind of thing, gardening and eating fresh fruits and vegetables, and that is really, I mean, it's always been a thing, but I think more and more people are realizing the value of growing your own, and that kind of thing. And so that space, I think, is only going to kind of continue to grow. And so it's been kind of fun to follow your adventure when it comes to that piece.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So the peppers that you get, so are you getting all locally grown stuff, or is this stuff that you're importing,
Some of
from?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it is. So, like, for example, like our habaneros, we use fresh pods we get from Publix, which are mostly regionally grown.
Mhm.
So the habaneros are mostly regional, and the jalapenos are as well. I think the more exotic ones, so like for example, the daddle peppers, I don't believe are grown here. So there is a farm that we buy the super hot, so like the ghosts, and the more obscure peppers, so like the scorpion powder, the scorpion powder that we use, because when it comes to those peppers, like the super hots, they're you can get fresh pods or frozen pods, but they're generally only available certain times of the year.
Mhm.
And and as you guys know, well, maybe not in necessarily all the businesses and that kind of thing, but in this space, it's difficult to continue to produce a product all year round if you don't have access to the ingredients all year round.
Right.
And so as much as we would have loved to really have been able to use fresh scorpion pods or whatever it might be, you can't get them in February. Like,
Mhm.
you just can't.
Yeah.
And so we'll use some fresh pods whenever the opportunity arises, but otherwise what we'll end up doing is we'll use dehydrated ones, or we'll use powder, or whatever it might be. So some of the more exotic ones we get from a farm that's a little bit north of Nashville, but we do our best to try to, like, the honey, and the honey habanero is a local honey, that's
Right.
here in Middle Tennessee.
Right.
And so we try to do it when possible. The only thing about it ends up being where it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze, to the point where I've got this list of ingredients, we try to use fresh ingredients as much as possible, but is it worth trying to use six suppliers, to pull in
Yeah,
this ingredient
understandable.
because it's locally sourced here, but I can't get these, but this I can get, locally. And at that point, then it just ends up being a lot more of a headache. And so our thought process is use a small handful of suppliers and just use as much fresh ingredients as we possibly can. It
Have you
generally tends to be the goal.
have you found out that consistency is a problem, or is consistency always kind of, is it
It
consistent all the time?
it is in a certain way. So, like, for example, using the habaneros, right? So we'll get the habaneros from Publix, which is a regional grocery chain here, in the South. But again, so like, because you're kind of at their whim, right? So I'll order 4 cases of habaneros. Sometimes they're green, like,
Mhm.
there's nothing I can do about it. So we end up using, we'll use the green ones in that scenario. It's not
Mhm.
super common, but it does happen.
Can you
One of
sun
the
them?
hmm?
Can you sun them?
So you could. The only issue that you would end up running into is that when you're talking about, like, your production schedule,
Oh,
right? So you could sun them a little bit, you could age them a little bit to ripen them, but they might not necessarily ripen all at the same rate, right? And so if you're working with, say, 9 or 10 pounds of habaneros, 3 or 4 days later, you might get 2 pounds that are pretty good, but
Mhm.
then while you're letting the rest of them age, now those have gone bad while
mm,
you're waiting for the other
Right.
ones to kind of get in that good range. And so you can, but there just ends up being a lot of variables that go along with it.
yeah.
So one of the advantages I think that we'll have, actually, by working with our co-packer who is close by, is that he's able to use, like, habanero mash, right? And
Mm,
so it's basically taking, fresh habaneros, and they turn it into a mash. And the big thing that we're going for there, and to your point, is the consistency portion of it. But we also wanted to make sure that when we were working with a mash, that it's not the peppers mixed with other things, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, we don't want it to be a mash of peppers plus this and plus this and plus this. So the mashes that we're working with are just red habaneros, right? Or it's just orange habaneros, or that kind of thing. And so that will allow us to get the consistency, but then also kind of keep with, using the fresh vegetables and fruits and ingredients and stuff as much as possible.
So in the beginning, you've had to have some funny stories about roasting and cooking peppers in your kitchen and all
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff, because I know for a fact that I have just, when I first started roasting peppers and stuff on my
Yep.
cast and stuff, it's like I'm running out of the kitchen crying.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh
do you have
yeah.
any, funny
I mean,
stories along that
there.
first couple of batches that you
Oh,
brought up?
100%. I mean, it got to the point where like I couldn't, especially too, because right at the beginning, right, you're making a bunch of different recipes. I essentially had to do it when the family was out of the house, or it had to be at night because my children would literally just be walking around, and my wife is then they're like, they're coughing and they're yelling at me, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys want from me. I seem to be okay or what, or whatever. And they're like, you can't do this when we're home. Like you can't do it. And when in some of our sauces we try to we char ingredients, and so there have been times before where the smoke detector's going off because we're trying to char some things in the kitchen, and it's fortunately we moved out of the house other than like the test
Mhm.
batches fairly quickly, but we cook now kind of out of community kitchen where there's other people that are there, and they always know when I'm about to get done, because when I go to clean all the pots and all that kind of stuff, everyone in the kitchen starts coughing,
Yes, the
and so
oil,
yeah,
the
yeah,
oils are everywhere.
it's just in the air. And so they always hate it. And so I try to wash everything as quickly as I can. But it's also gotten to the point where like I'm fairly desensitized, so I can handle a lot of the peppers and things without gloves. There was one time where I was actually doing a little prep for the pineapple. And so I'm de-stemming habanero peppers and that kind of thing, getting ready to cook them. And my youngest son wanted some pineapple. And so like I just kind of cut him off a piece of pineapple or whatever. I hand it to him and he's like, "Oh, it's spicy. It's spicy." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's just pineapple. Like I didn't dip anything in it." And my wife is like, "Well, did you touch it?" And I'm like, "Well, I cut it off." And she's like, "Were you wearing gloves?" And I was like, "No, I'm not wearing gloves." And she's like, "Well, you were just touching all these peppers and then you touched the
Yeah.
pineapple." And I go, "You know what? All right, that was
Yeah.
my bad. Like I was
The
all right, you got."
Tapestine is so, I mean, it's so, I've heard it's just really hard to scrub off. I mean, I know because I do everything with gloves
Yeah.
when I'm wearing peppers, because I've learned that lesson
Yeah.
of doing something and going like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
you
Exactly.
know?
You pick your nose or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Done it
So,
for a
and
while.
it's funny you bring that up too, is because I don't know if you guys know who Ed Curry is, but he's the owner of Pucker Butt, who created the Carolina Reaper. He
Right.
created Pepper X, and I've had the chance to meet Ed a couple of times. But if you do meet him, he won't shake your hand. Like he doesn't shake anyone's hands because he's literally in his garden, on his land, at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's
Mhm.
touching super hot peppers, and so he doesn't touch anybody because it's all over his hands.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he just finds that it's better for him just to not touch anybody, right? Like he'll do kind of like a little fist bump or an elbow tap or something
Yeah.
like that, but
There
he
you
just
go.
doesn't like anyone touching his hands because of what he carries on there.
That's hilarious.
So, yeah, so if you do ever meet him and he doesn't shake your hand, don't be offended. It's literally because he doesn't touch anybody.
Well,
I
I
can
don't like
relate
touching
with
people either. So
that back when I still was did custom painting and stuff, and that was kind of my job. I did mostly motorcycles, right? When they're small and they're not, but I had 2-car garage. It's not like I had a spray booth or any kind of legal anything there. But I had one guy comes in with a 48 Chevy. He says, "Can you paint this?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I got the thing all sanded and did all the stuff, and over a few weeks. And when I went to spray it. Well, 48 Chevy's an enormous car, and I'm in a 2-car garage. It's cold out, so the doors are closed. I mean, I'm in just this cloud of overspray and paint, right?
Oh,
And it's all, it's like 5 coats of the base coat and then 4 coats of clear coat and stuff. I had the garage door propped open a little bit, but anyway, it was like the next morning. I painted at night because just for the same reason, for the smell and whatever like that. And I got done at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. went to bed, woke up the next morning. My wife's like, "You're never painting a car here again, ever." I'm like, "Why?" Because I don't even notice it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then, like, the kids are like, what's the smell? What is that? Did Dad just
Why
paint
am I,
in the house
why am I
last night?
sticky?
So it's the
Yeah.
same thing. I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe a 2-car garage and
Right.
one half of a twin home isn't the place to run a body
Especially if it's
shop.
an attached garage. Shit, if it's
Yeah.
detached, that might be better.
Oh, worse than attached. It was one of those ones. It's a twin home, so it's attached and it's under the house.
Oh shit.
Even better. Even better. Hey,
You're just
sometimes all it
fuming
takes is
everybody.
one, right? It just takes one time.
Right. Well, also I'm heating it with an open flame heater too, which was
That's
also
okay,
nice.
but the thing is, you're fuming the house with all your exhaust. Like the open flame, that's whatever.
Yeah. Well,
It'll burn. It'll burn.
I
any
figure if it
fumes
doesn't
off.
explode, it can't be bad for you.
No,
There you
it'll
go.
just burn the
See?
flames off.
Yeah. Yeah. You're good.
So,
It's
so
like
we might have touched
making
on
your
this.
own heroin.
Yeah, so we might have touched on this before, but I know I asked you why peppers, why hot sauce, but I mean, what was your penchant? What turned you on to hot sauce in the beginning? I mean, what was it? What was it because you liked hot sauce? Did you grow peppers? Was it in your family? You know, how did that ever come about before actually the hot sauce became your penchant for your entrepreneurial?
No, I've liked hot sauce. I've eaten hot sauce, never obviously to this scale. But part of it is like we were talking about before, as far as the subscription portion of it, where I was trying to figure out an idea of what would make sense especially from a creative standpoint, that would make sense as a subscription. And so I was thinking like, well, books would be cool, but then I'm like, but books doesn't really work because you can't make any money off of that, because
No.
they could just go somewhere else and buy the same book for whatever, price or that kind of thing. And so uh I was just thinking, I'm like, well, what makes sense? And so in a Signal chat with some of the guys that's here in Middle Tennessee, one of the guys that's in there, he made his own hot sauce. And I've grown my own peppers in my own garden, and that kind of thing in the past, but never for sauce purposes. It'd be jalapenos, right? We would have them for burritos or tacos or that kind of thing.
Salsa.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
also, it's mostly salsas for me.
Salsa garden.
And so he did, and so he was talking because he had brought some sauce to a meetup that we had, or that kind of thing. And so I just reached out to him directly and say, hey, I know you listen to Tom Woods. There was this episode on subscriptions, and he was like, oh yeah, I heard that too. And he was like, I was trying to think about what might make sense or what might be a good idea. And so I was like, well, hey, I know you make your own sauce. What if we kind of get together, and I know a lot from the business side, a lot from the sauce side, and let's see if we've got something here. And I've always liked being from the creative standpoint of it. And so the thing that I really kind of fell in love with early on was the fact that you could literally do just about anything, right? Like, you can start with an idea of what you want the sauce to be, and then you can get almost as creative as possible. There's very few restrictions in terms of what you could potentially do with us, right? Like, you can't have dairy, like dairy wouldn't work. And there's a few other restrictions and that kind of thing, but the creative aspect of it is really what drew me in. The fact that, like, I could make, our goal was we were like, okay, well, let's make like he's going to make 3 different jalapeno sauces. I'm going to make 3 different jalapeno sauces. You're going to make 3 different and then we would get together, see which ones we liked the most, and then that was going to kind of be like our base. But the fact that, like, I could make 3 jalapeno sauces, he could make 3 jalapeno sauces, and they're very different because just the way that our brains operate in terms of ingredients and what we want to get out of it and that kind of thing is really kind of what made me jump in all the way, is just because you have the ability to be able to be almost as creative as you possibly can be. And that's what's kind of kept me here and kept me going with it.
Yeah. Did you have any Frankenstein's monsters on the way? To
Oh,
your,
100%. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
tell us
yeah.
about one. Tell us about one. I want to hear one.
We've made like Reaper sauces that were like so unbelievably hot that, like, I couldn't even do it. Like, we made one of them we actually made with for Scott Horton. So Scott Horton, when he launched his book, Hotter Than the Sun, which was about nuclear weapons, I reached out to him and I was basically like, look, like I have to pitch a sauce to you, because you're writing a book called Hotter Than the Sun. Like I want to be able to make a sauce that kind of correlates, and that's that with it. And so we had a couple of failed testers with that sauce as well, until we eventually decided we were just going to make basically make a Dr. Pepper themed sauce. So it literally has Dr. Pepper in the recipe with a lot of additional ingredients that are in Dr. Pepper to make it kind of for him. But there were some disasters with there. Anything with really hard to work with ingredients like beets. Beets make a really beautiful sauce color, but they're very earthy and they're very overpowering. And so I've made some sauces with beets before where I literally just took a bite and I go, nope. And then we just dump it right down the drain. I mean, so at least the benefit of it is if it tastes like shit, you can just throw it away.
Yeah.
And if it's workable or not, like if you can make some tweaks. But I mean, for the most part, it's gotten to the point where we've done it enough, right? I mean, if I'm doing the math in my head, I mean, I've probably made, in total, probably 200 to 300 different batches of hot sauces. But that's probably about 50 or 60 different flavor combinations, pairings, and that kind of thing. And so I've gotten to the point now where I understand the ratios pretty well. I understand the flavor combinations pretty well. So it doesn't happen as much as it used to. Now it's just more along the lines of, hey, let's try, this ratio of ghost peppers or whatever it might be. And then you realize that when it's done, there's just too much heat, right? Or there's not enough. But so then it's just minor tweaks for the most part. But we don't get as many of those like absolute disasters, like we did when we were first starting.
Yeah, we're a little bougie here in California, so we do a lot of things with wine and pairings with that. I'm trying right now to actually. I got a couple of favorite wines. We just finished a bottle of Pinot Noir, and I didn't have the chance to do any hot sauce with it tonight, but I really want to start doing some stuff with hot sauce and wines because I think it might work out pretty well. I've got some friends around that.
We made a rosé sauce for the rosé festival.
I remember that one. Yeah, I tried that one.
A rosé sauce. Oh,
yeah.
God,
So it was a rosé sauce, and it was popular enough to where one of the wineries that's here in Middle Tennessee, Arrington Vineyards, is a customer of ours. And so when we were going back and forth in terms of what products they wanted to stock and that kind of thing, she asked me, she was like, do you have any more of the rosé sauce? And I was like, actually, we only made it one time for that specific event, but it at least made an impact enough to where she was like, hey, we would like to carry that one. So you kind of keep. One of the things we also screwed up early on is we didn't really track a lot of our recipes.
Oh,
I just kind of threw a bunch of shit together, and it turned out to be pretty good. You're like, well, sorry.
Learning lessons.
Yeah.
Learning lessons.
Yeah. But
well, if you remember, Bruce, I don't know if you remember Nelson Lopez. He was in the group, in the Nomad group too, and he did artisan tastings. And he's out in California, and he's got his own wine company now.
I remember that guy. The wine,
he was really cool. I was working on some logo stuff a few years ago, and just brought it up. I was like, he'd be a good guy to talk to and say what we could pair up with his wine and Tennessee hot sauce.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be a kind of cool thing to.
And trying to do something like that because
I'm trying to keep tabs on a lot of the Nomadic Network guys. I really, really enjoyed that network. Yeah, and I'm sad that it's gone. But I think about how fun it'd be in 10 years to be able to stay in touch and see how
people have a reunion,
see how people do, and say, what have you done with this and this kind of thing.
Carol was the big one where because she was a subscriber for a little while. I know she moved a lot, but I haven't seen a lot from her. And Wendy was another one. I mean, she's actually still subscribing, and I haven't seen much from her either.
Well, we never really technically saw much of her. It was just the eyebrows up.
That's true. That's fair.
And the wall of mirrors. Wendy was great. And then
Yeah.
there's Tom Ceast. He's another one that we
Yeah,
stay in touch
Tom, I
with him.
still keep in contact with. He's over
Yeah,
in East Tennessee.
Yeah,
I
Tom-
actually
Tom will be
came.
back on the podcast in the morning tomorrow. He's
Oh,
coming back.
great! Yeah,
He does
Tom's a
our
super
morning
cool
story.
guy. I know he was having some health issues for a little bit, but I
Mhm.
actually got.
nonstop, unfortunately.
Yeah,
With his
constantly.
heart, he
Got
needs
bad
a
heart.
new
Mhm.
one. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
But I actually got to go last year over to his area in East Tennessee and did a presentation for their community entrepreneurial network. There was about 20 or 25 folks that were in there, and it was everything from, one guy owned a mechanic store, and one person owned a Delta 9 CBD smoke house,
Mhm.
essentially,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And so it was really cool getting a lot of the dynamics. Now, obviously, there were a lot of similar mindsets there, which was cool, right? So it created a lot of creativity, a lot of awesome outlets and that kind of thing. But seeing the variety in terms of the business profiles and people's activity in terms of the community was really cool to see.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see Tennessee. I'm coming out there in May for about 7 to 10 days. We're going to be up in Knoxville, and we're going to stay in a couple of VRBOs just to get a flavor of what's going on there. That's kind of where we're thinking about
Yeah,
maybe
you'll love it.
relocating. Yeah,
We
so
we
as long as
we
I
get
can garden there and grow soil, I'll be happy. So
yeah. You can, and I mean, we get, so we're in the Nashville Franklin area, and so being in a couple of the Facebook groups, I mean, I would say there's at least 2 or 3 a day where it's like, "Hey, I'm moving to the area from California.
Yep.
This is kind of my budget or whatever. This is where I'm looking for a place," and that kind of thing. Now, obviously, what you also get is you get the list of people where it's like, "Okay, just remember why you're leaving California
yeah,
when
don't bring your politics.
Don't bring your bullshit out here. They said
Yeah.
the same when we moved to Wisconsin. They said the same thing. They're like,
Yeah.
leave your bullshit
As
over
long as
there.
I can have my one plant in the middle of my tomatoes, I'm fine.
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
so
you're in Nashville area, and that's where Chris Strum is as well
Yeah, Chris
too,
Strum.
and he's got his podcast, Two Beers with the Band, and he's been on here before as well too. I actually edit his podcast for him and stuff, and
oh, that's cool.
yeah, and so
I didn't realize he was in the Nashville area.
yeah, he's
Okay.
in Nashville. Yeah, he
Yeah,
grew up in
okay.
Nashville, and
Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah, he's all about he refers to it as the music city and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah.
He's like it goes right through his veins. You know what I'm saying?
I
He's
love it.
Nashville.
We actually do our best to try not to go into Nashville whenever possible, just because it's just like, well, for one, it's a little far away, but then
Right.
it's just like driving into a city, right? Like you're like, okay, we're
Mhm.
trying to get here, and then you're like, okay, well, where do you park? And
Mm.
then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, now I have to scan a UPC code so I can pay $30 to park here, and I'm going to be here for a total of an hour and 10 minutes, or however long it ends up being. But for the most part, has been pretty great. I mean, I know I grew up in a military family, so we moved a lot. Every 1 or 2 years we were kind of going somewhere else. And we've been here now for about 5 years. And generally speaking, every 2 to 3 years, I kind of get the itch where I'm like, all right, it's time to, where are we looking to go into next? But since we've been here, I've gotten the itch, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know where we would go. Like I can't think of where we would be able to go where the pros would outweigh the cons of
Yeah.
leaving.
I was having that
Um,
conversation with my wife today. It's just like, because I've had all the ideas. It's like North Carolina or it's like Tennessee. And I'm
mhm.
going like, hun, where do you want? She's like, well, I really don't know. And I'm going like, well, if we stay in California, there's really, I could exchange houses with somebody, but that's
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
There's no other real place to go. And it's really nice out here. The weather's great.
yeah.
It's a
I mean, there's
beautiful
a
state.
reason why you pay. I mean, you pay for it, right?
Yeah, yeah. But in long terms, man, it's just like it's not a real great place to retire. It really
Yeah,
isn't. And my money can go farther someplace else. And we're
sure.
just looking for a spot where, the government's pretty much going to leave me alone.
Yeah,
My neighbors aren't 12 feet away from me on either
Yep.
side.
Right.
and things like that. So that's kind of what we're looking for,
Yeah.
and close enough to medical attention that we don't have
Right.
to be
Right.
medevaced into wherever we need to go.
I mean, in our area, we have a community of people. One of them is one of the guys that lives in our neighborhood. So he lives here. So in the Nashville area, and he's actually a firefighter in LA County. And so he flies from here to LA for his job. And
Right.
so it's a group of, I mean, there's most of them
Kind of
are in
sounds
like,
redundant to me.
well, most of them obviously have been firefighters there for a while, right? So
Right.
they've got seniority, they've been there for 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. So they don't want to relocate to another station. They just don't want to live in California anymore. And so a
Right.
lot of them will live in Arizona or Nevada, but what they do is they will live somewhere else and then they trade their shifts around. So that way, what they end up doing is he'll fly from Nashville to California. He'll be in California for like 10 days, 7 to 10 days or whatever it is straight. And then he comes back here and he stays here for like 2 weeks. So he's here for 2 weeks and then he flies back out there for another week or whatever it might be. And so the benefits to your point, right, is his money goes further here. The perks of the communities or whatever it might be are
Right.
here. It's just not worth starting over,
Yeah.
uh,
My,
and here.
Yeah, my biggest concern is not moving to a place that's slowly or rapidly going, into blue. I
Yeah,
want to say someplace that's, somewhere in the middle, red, wherever, because
sure.
California is basically mostly a conservative state, unless you're in the Bay Area where I'm at, or down in LA County where,
Right.
because basically that's where all the money is. But yeah, I'd be doing the same thing where I'd be going back and forth to
Yep.
California, probably 1 week every 2 months, something like that,
Right.
just to
Right.
kind of
And
be associated back with the company. But other than that, I'll be remote. So it works
exactly.
out great. I mean, my employer is right on line with that. He's all like, yeah, we understand and stuff like that, but we really like to keep you,
Mhm.
so they'll throw money at me all they want, to keep me there. But,
Yeah.
money only goes so far.
Right. Right. And it goes less far in California.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
cool.
yeah, I mean, it's been a cool community, and it's funny too, is because growing up, and you guys are probably similar. Chris may not be quite to this point because he's not old enough yet, but maybe he'll get there. I always kind of wanted to. I never wanted to live in a big city, but I kind of wanted to live close by one. And then as I've gotten older, I'm now at that stage where I'm like, a family compound sounds pretty good.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've been
absolutely.
there for years, man. Yeah, I moved out of the city
Oh yeah.
7 years ago,
I see your
and
videos. You're walking in the woods
in
next
the
to the
woods.
stream,
Yeah,
Where the
I'm
cicadas
where
rule, baby.
I'm
Where
where
the cicadas
nobody
rule.
is for a reason. Like fuck everybody.
Yeah,
Cicadas and coyotes.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
there's coyotes and deer and shit like that. Yeah, I don't.
yeah. So
No.
yeah, so
Chris lives
now
in a
it's like, all right,
beautiful.
well, where can we find like 10 to 20 acres where we can start by putting like a house on there in like 5 or 10 years, and then my sister and my brother-in-law they'd want a place, and then I've
Yeah.
got two nieces and then our boys, and it's like, well, hey, you know what, we get 10 to 20 acres or whatever somewhere, and in 10 to 20 years or whatever, we'll have a handful of houses on there, and we'll have some gardens and and that kind of thing. And I'm like, I understand those people
That
now.
sounds
Like,
like heaven to me, man.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, there's
Yeah.
40
I'd rather
acres.
have 50 acres and nobody, and then my dad can be 50 acres away, and my mom can be on the other 50 acres. You know what I'm saying? I just want my space.
Exactly. Exactly. And I want a moat around that stuff with sharks in there with lasers in their freaking heads.
Yeah.
I
A
just want to make
shark
sure that I
boat.
can keep this tan. That's what I want. I want to keep this tan.
Yeah.
I think you keep that regardless of where you're at, Bruce.
Yeah. Especially how much you work out in the garden. I think you'll be
Oh, dude.
okay.
That's my favorite place to be.
Yeah.
When I was out golfing with my buddy yesterday, And he's all like, well, why don't you come over? We'll have a beer, dude. And I'll put on some steaks and stuff. I'm like, dude, I need to get home. He's like, what are you going to do? Go out in your garden? I'm like, dude, that's my heaven, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Come over and have a beer with me and
Why-
freaking work out in the garden, dude.
Why
Come
would
on.
you deny me heaven? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I love golfing and everything. It's all fine and dandy, man, but I would rather just be sitting here at home with my
Yeah.
hands in the dirt, dude. It's just fucking,
I get it.
and people look at you and they think you're crazy,
Right.
but it is, you know.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I
I'm
am
crazy. You all have
I'm
drove me
crazy.
fucking
I'm
crazy.
okay
Your
being
whole
crazy.
fucking society has drove me
And the-
crazy.
and the
I don't
funny-
want a part
and
of
the
it
funny thing
anymore.
about it, yeah, the funny thing about it is I hated pulling weeds and all that stuff when I was a kid. I hated it. I would
Yeah.
run
Destroy
away not to
them.
do it. And
Yeah.
now it's just like, oh, just let me pull that weed. Just let me get into that dirt. I
Just
want to
put-
see what
I-
that dirt
straw
looks
bale.
like under.
I just spray lacquer thin them on them. You just
Yeah.
you just go.
Oh,
I just
no,
take.
don't do that.
I still got all my body shop stuff, so I just go around there and spray lacquer thinner. The hard stuff is maybe acetone, but
Yeah.
lacquer thinner works pretty good.
I'll just come
that'll
in like
work.
this when I see your house. I'll just go like this, especially your barbecue. I'll just go.
Oh, I can't wait
Yeah.
for you to see my grill.
So Jason needs to make like a sticker or something along those lines that's just got Bruce's face on it. It's got a little weed in the corner and it just says, just let me pull that weed.
I can totally make that.
That
totally
is
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
easy.
that's our
let me
new
pull that weed.
podcast mantra.
Yes, I can totally do that. I'll send him that too.
That is
I love it.
fantastic. So,
Yeah,
Danny, I'm gonna get going because I'm about to fall asleep.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries. No, I
I've-
am
Good
too.
to
Yeah,
good
yeah,
to talk to you. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for coming on, man. It's we'll have to
Yeah.
yeah, and I
It's
can
been-
just let me know what you want to do on this. I can
Okay.
fix that. I can fix that typo, and if we want to add anything
Yeah, no
else, do
worries.
anything else, it takes 2 seconds. So
I think we've got enough labels for like 2 or 3 more batches. And then we'll get it cleaned up. But,
okay, that sounds
um,
cool.
and I will say too, it's been awesome following your guys' adventures and things along those lines as well.
Yeah, we
I
appreciate it, man.
would say there's not really a day that goes by where I don't get at least a good chuckle out of one of Jason's, whatever
Yes.
he's putting on there,
They're so good.
like
He does. He
I'm
comes up with
assuming at this
some-
point he's got to use AI to come up with some of this stuff because
No.
it's just
No, he uses
Oh, we
JI.
poke and prod him all the time.
Yeah,
Partially
it's
'cause it's-
Jason's
partially
intelligence.
because it's a lot of material.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's
basically-
just it's so
basically,
much.
bacon is better than butthole. So that's where.
Yeah.
I guess so. I
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not using AI to come up with these ideas at all. A lot of it is just, some of it will happen when I'm out in traffic and I'm driving and people are pissing me off. The ideas just hit me, or sometimes it'll be when I'm in the shower. I'll think of it. Or,
Absolutely.
Now,
it's
so
the weirdest,
let me ask you
weirdest
this then.
times ever.
you
Where's
bring up an
Travis?
interesting point. So I know that I hear this a lot listening to stand-up comics and that kind of thing that they'll generally at least have like a notepad handy or their phone or whatever. So when something like that, do you write it down? Like you
We have
Yes,
we have
I
a,
have.
we have a
Yes.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yep, I've got a little thing, a notepad app on my phone that I will keep these ideas down. So, like when I'm picking my kids up from school, and there was one lady in a minivan who cut me off, and she pissed me off. I'm like, that lady must be a Karen. So it brought up the whole decal that came up with that said, minivans, the official vehicle of Karens. I just want to speak to the manager. I thought of that because this lady cut me off in a minivan.
Yeah.
And so I put it on. Yeah, it's just stuff like that comes to mind.
And we have a
one
mile
recently-
long private chat. We have a mile long private chat that we have.
Oh, there you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
This thing is
that-
just-
that
One
is a
recently,
log.
I can't pronounce his last name, but Gary, he's the one who shot that pedophile that
Yeah.
abused his kid.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that was great.
So I turned him into an anti-pedo sticker, and the funny thing is that I put that on there, and like a day later, his son, the one who got abused, retweeted it. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Freaking
I remember
Holy
seeing it.
hell.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. When you see
That's cool.
your dad's face on somebody else's stuff, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there are a few off holidays that are celebrated in the Liberty Circle. That being one,
Yep.
and then Killdozer Day is
Yeah, those
generally
are just
another
June
one.
4th just
you
passed
know?
by.
Killed,
Yeah, that was great.
Killdozer, the funny thing about the Killdozer is that Bill Reichland from Clock and Craft Coffee messaged me one day on Facebook, and he's like, "You should do a shirt with this." And I thought about it. I was like, "I will, but nobody's gonna buy it." And fuck, was I wrong?
Yeah, that killed it. My favorite part about when we're doing all the show together is Jason's. You can hear all this the machines going in the background because he's working as we're doing the show, and he gets up and he puts a mug in, does a. I fucking love it.
Yeah. You just see him up and around doing
like
shit.
beeping. I'm like, yeah, that's my mug press is going off because I'm fulfilling orders.
Yeah, there you go. I'm
Yep.
willing to be unreasonable.
Yep. I
Yeah,
love that,
exactly. That's exactly it. Right? When reasonable men decide to do unreasonable things.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know if you got a chance to hear the one we did. So we had one of my friends. He's a representative in Minnesota, Shane Meckland on. He's not your average politician. I'll just put
there
it
you go.
that
There's
way.
our coaster.
Yeah, there you go. Those coasters are great. But
Yes,
if you want to listen to a funny, a fun discussion, listen to the Shane Meckland episode we had because he's a totally
awesome.
different cat, man. He's just a swearing, beer drinking, hardworking motherfucker that just happened. He's a contractor and successful contractor in Minnesota that managed to get elected, and he is the most liberty guy. He out libertarians anybody, and he's a Republican because you can't. I mean, the Libertarian Party in Minnesota is an absolute shit show joke.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's rough. The party here. I'm friends with quite a few of the guys that are part of the party here, but in Tennessee, I think even to have ballot access, they require something like so an independent requires, I think, 50 signatures, but any third party ballot access signature requires something like 15,000.
Right.
You know,
Usually that's the way they do it.
You know, and it's like 3 times as high as like the next highest in the country, you know, or something along those lines. And so the guys here are great, but it's kind of one of those things where it's almost impossible to get anything going just because of the sheer scale that you have to try to climb.
Well, and to run as an independent, anyone can do that and get on the ballot pretty much because they know they don't care about that person. They have no backing. When you put some sort of party affiliate, like they're terrified, both sides are terrified of libertarians because they can sway in any election in any direction. So
I don't know if they're that terrified now with the new nominee. So
no, that was a good move on their part. That was one of the smarter things I've seen.
Yeah, that was
that was got to be shitting.
Yeah, that one was a little rough, you know.
That's a little hard to take that one. That's one of those. Well, glad I enjoyed those fuckers.
Yeah,
that was one of those moments. You know, I hated what's his name. The guy I can never remember his name. He was the governor of Nevada or something.
Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson. I thought he was the worst shit show I've ever seen. I'm like, why does he keep?
One time.
Why? I know you did, but that's okay. You also joined the army, so you know. what can I tell you?
That's true. I voted for Obama, Gary Johnson, then Trump twice in the same year.
Well, I voted for Michael Dukakis and Paul Wellstone at some point. So I mean, I can't. I'm you know, but for the grace of God.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
We're gonna let Ken sleep off his lacquer high.
Yeah, I'm gonna
hop my too.
I actually have to get up to try to do my workout. So in my old man stage, I've gotten to the point now where I take my 40 plus daily vitamins, right?
There you go.
And I try to get my workout in every morning before anybody else even
my
wakes
yoga
up.
in the morning, my walk in the afternoon. Got all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I've told my wife, and it's funny that you bring up the walk in the afternoon because like if I don't, I try to get one in the afternoon. It's hard now this time of the year because it's hot.
So I do it first thing in the morning.
Well, that's why I try and get my workout in, you know, first thing in the morning. But that, you know, there's something about it that just going for a walk and it helps kind of reset, you know, and kind of get your thoughts together and, you know, and that kind of thing. And so I try to get one in on a daily basis. Sometimes it's a mile, sometimes it's 3 miles, you know, it just kind of depends. I try to walk the dog with me, you know, and that kind of thing. But, you know, it's good. That's why, like, it's funny watching Chris's videos and stuff where he's just kind of out walking in the woods. And I'm like, I get that. I feel that.
That's how I start my day every morning with my dogs, man.
I totally get it.
Every morning, every morning we get up. And here's my shirt that one of my kids got me for Father's Day. Right? It's doing. I don't know if you can
Doing
see it.
dad shit.
Doing
There we go,
dad
baby.
shit.
It says doing dad shit. Yeah, for those of y'all listening, it says
What do we do
doing
in the
dad
morning
shit.
on a morning
It's a
show?
dude sitting on
That's
the
hilarious.
toilet on
See,
his phone.
I'm also wearing my Father's Day shirt. So
Yeah, yeah.
every year my boys they'll kind of design a
Design their
shirt,
own?
and then my
Nice.
wife will get it printed for me. So
That's dope.
Nice.
But yeah,
Um,
like every morning, I go do my dad shit and then grab the dogs and then we go in the fucking woods,
There you
and
go.
then I ended up we do our workout in the evening because me and my kids go. No, they're 16, they're not like 7 like yours,
yeah,
And so after they get off work, I pick them up and then we just go to the gym in the evening, come back, eat some food, and crash
Yeah.
or whatever and stuff. So
Yeah.
however it works out for you, but yeah, doing a daily walk, it's so fucking therapeutic, man. Especially
I love
when
it.
you just have everything turned off, you just hear just the noises, the birds, and all that, just the nature noises only. It just it like you said, it resets you. But I
Yeah.
like doing it to start my morning because it just helps me clear my head. I just do a walking meditation with it where you just let your mind just go.
Yeah. I
So
love it.
it's
I-
great.
It's great.
I like a good walk too, and many mornings I've been known to, instead of walking to the car through the garage, I'll go just out the front door and that
Mhm.
extra 20 feet outside to the car.
Yeah, that's
It's
helped
just,
too.
and there's something about the leaves and you can say you hear the birds and stuff, and in our neighborhood, you guys will see when you're out here, there's paratroopers because we have a skydiving school,
I love it.
and so you get the plane sound and the screaming
Yeah.
terror. It's no, it's great. I love outside.
Yeah, don't let Ken lie to you. Half the year it's got snow on the ground, so it's not. He's not. There's no birds. They've all migrated away.
Yeah.
That's true. That's
Danny, thank you for the bonus time, man. We're gonna let you go so you
Yeah,
get that
appreciate
workout
it.
in the
absolutely,
morning.
gentlemen. I love it, and you
Ken-
guys keep killing it.
And I'll see you. I'll see you. I'll see all three of you knuckleheads on Thursday night or Friday whenever we get together. Because I'm excited. I'm going to be on a jet plane Thursday morning, headed out to Minneapolis. Going to go see Ken on my way into Baldwin, Wisconsin. He's going to show me his place, and we're just going to have a good time, man. So I'm really excited about it. For those of you that are on the other side, you got this in bonus episodes. So I should have shown this on the first episode, but we're going to be doing a whole bunch of live stuff coming up this next week. So that's going to be really good. We'll probably be telling people about that on X.
We're going to be doing one of the most America things that you can possibly do at a car show with 12,000 cars, all built before 1964.
Wow.
Should play that
Largest
America
in the world.
song.
Harkus, this is your show, man. Pull us out, baby.
All right. Well, see you on the next one. Have a good day.